Hello, Facebook. My name is Matt Welch. I'm the editor-at-large of Reason Magazine. I am sitting next to the most popular third-party presidential ticket of the last 24 years, Governor Gary Johnson and Governor William Weld of the Libertarian Party. And we're sitting about 30 miles away from Hofstra University, where in about 2.5 hours, we're going to see a debate between two people, not three people, for president that they have been excluded from here. First, I just want to say thank you to Governor Gary Johnson, William Weld, for joining us. And we're going to talk for about a half an hour here, and we're going to take your questions. Please send them along. I have a phone. Somehow I'm going to understand them and read them while we're doing this live from a rooftop here in Chelsea. I want to start first by saying, you're not at the debates here tonight. What is the single most important question that you think they're not going to discuss, or at least not going to discuss adequately on stage tonight over there?
Well, it's certainty and uncertainty, all right? Certainty that Hillary Clinton is not going to lower taxes, certainty that government is going to be the answer to everything, and then there's the certainty also of Donald Trump that everything's going to be uncertain. He's all over the board on everything, and the certainty here with Bill Weld and myself is that taxes wouldn't go down. They wouldn't go up, excuse me. Neither of us raised a single penny of tax over our terms as governors. We would stand up for civil liberties and people being able to make choices in their own lives. We'd be against dropping bombs. We would be against the military going in and supporting regime change. And we're the free market guys. We believe that free markets will be about more U.S. jobs.
Governor Weld, you were excluded from the vice presidential debate, so give us your opening statement that you would have told them back over there.
Well, let me say that I think the elephant in the room that they're not going to talk about in response to the Gary question is how they would make the numbers add up. They're not touching the entitlements. They're going to print money like it was water, and they think somehow the budget is going to balance itself. No, it's not going to balance itself. If we get in there, we're going to file a balanced budget within the first 100 days. I guess my opening pitch would be, with us, you don't have to guess. Nobody can deny that we changed our states. Nobody can deny that Gary Johnson is governor of New Mexico and Bill Weld is governor of Massachusetts, moved the state almost bodily. We had to, main force it into a more responsible fiscal position. When we got in there, our states were flat on their backs. Mr. Dukakis' finance secretary said the year that I took over, the state is bankrupt. He was right. The state could not pay its bills. But you got to do what you got to do. You got to have the political will to make cuts and bring that budget into balance, or it hollows out the economy. And every responsible government official knows that. And I'm not sure I see one up there on the stage tonight.
And balancing the federal budget. That's all about young people. That's all about these programs, Medicaid, Medicare, a health care safety net that will actually exist for young people today. My generation, I'm going to get health care, I'm going to get retirement, but you're not as a young person. Come on, we've blown it. Young people, I know they recognize this.
Hillary Clinton and her supporters have been saying that young people are crazy for thinking about supporting you because you're right-wing lunatics. How have you responded to the kind of new attention that you've been receiving out there?
Well, we're right-wing lunatics to Hillary, and we're left-wing lunatics to Trump. So I think we've got it. I think we're right down the middle. We're lunatic in both categories, really. We were not wallflowers as governors, standing up for fiscal responsibility and for civil liberties, people being able to make their own choices. Bill taking a leading stance when it came to marriage equality, gay rights, myself legalizing marijuana. We were not wallflowers. This was in the 90s.
So one thing that's going on this year, Matt, is both parties are trying to perpetuate their monopoly on power in Washington, D.C. And when they get out there talking to people on the hustings, the argument they advance is to assume their own conclusion and say, well, everyone knows you have to vote for the R party or the D party because we've done such a fabulous job in Washington over the last 15 years. Well, they won't even talk to each other in Washington. They're united in a death spiral embrace only by their desire to perpetuate their monopoly. But otherwise, they exist for no purpose other than killing each other. And I think what we'll see tonight is two candidacies that exist for no purpose other than trying to kill each other. That leaves one party, one stakeholder out of the action. That would be the American taxpayer and the American people.
Let me offer a prediction tonight, that at the end of the debate tonight, the entire country rises up and says, wow, we're in great hands. Not. That is not going to happen.
You've said that it's going to be game over if you don't make the debates. So you're not going to make the first two debates. Is the game half over?
Well, not the first two debates. If you mean presidential, vice presidential, we're not excluded from debate number 2. Really, I think tonight could be a real push. And with this Facebook Live piece, and Matt, you're doing a fabulous job here as the moderator, I have to tell you, this ought to push us over 15%. I mean, if this doesn't do it, I don't know what does. If this debate tonight, if the nation collectively does what I think it's going to do, and that is roll its eyeballs and recognize that there is a third choice, hey, we're in the second debate. We're at a go.
We're going to take your questions here in a second. I want to channel one immediately from Eric Sturrock, who's one of the better Twitterers following you out there. He asks, have you had any conversations with members of the House of Representatives about what would happen in a scenario in which no candidate got 207 Electoral College votes?
Well, we would have been crazy not to be having those conversations. When it gets to the House, every state has one vote, and that's determined by the congressional delegation. So, for us not to think what states might we run strongly in where we'd have a talking point with the congressional members of that caucus, we'd be crazy not to.
You would be crazy not to, but are you having those conversations?
Well, it's not me. It's people except in 2 or 3 cases, it's people in the campaign who are even closer to those CODELs, congressional delegations. But yes.
Another question that I've been getting a lot of, and allow me to paraphrase here, is, Gary Johnson, you're running for president. Why you got to be so goofy?
Because that's just who I am. And if goofy means being fiscally conservative, small government, being a good steward of tax dollars, if goofy means standing up for civil liberties, you and I being able to make choices in our lives, if goofy means standing up for military personnel that we're putting in harm's way, if goofy is saying let's stop with regime changes, if goofy is supporting free markets, more U.S. jobs, I'm the goofiest guy on the whole planet.
You kind of scared me there, frankly. Bill Weld, when's the last time you talked to Carl Bernstein?
I talked to Carl within the last 2 weeks.
Can you characterize that conversation for those of us who found his statement on CNN about a week ago to be rather curious, characterizing your potential tenuousness at the ticket and being worried about somehow delivering the election to Donald Trump?
Well, Carl and I are friends, and I think he's a good guy. He was just speculating. He made no bones about that, but it's not well-grounded speculation, and I do think the campaign seized on it to try and promote the rumor that I would renounce everything that I'm doing. I'm not that kind of guy, and I've sort of said so today. It would not be in character at all. So, last Friday, I got 25 emails saying, you idiot, you have to renounce your candidacy or else you'll be a villain to the United States because you'll elect Donald Trump. Then on Monday, I got 25 voicemails at my office saying the same thing. So I got to think, these are from people I do not know. So I have to think that's orchestrated from somewhere, and I would think one possible source, directly or indirectly, would be the Clinton campaign. But that's who I'm talking about. It's not Carl Bernstein. Carl was fine. He was just speculating.
You have occasionally courted controversy with things that you have talked about in terms of global warming and climate change policy, whether it's embracing the sun or a carbon tax. Can you state very succinctly what a President Gary Johnson climate policy would look like?
Well, number one is we are concerned with global warming. I do think that it's man-caused. I think that as consumers, we are demanding less carbon emission, and we're getting it. And we're getting it from a free market standpoint. Look, coal has been bankrupted because at its incredibly depressed price right now, natural gas is even lower priced. So why are you going to build a power plant powered by coal if you could do that with natural gas? So look, we all care about carbon emission, and we're getting less carbon emission. Great example of free market at work.
So basically, don't do a whole lot and let the free market sort it out?
Well, kind of, sort of, and also recognizing that the United States is 16% of the carbon load worldwide. Carbon doesn't know boundaries, so we can't take a lead in this that will result in fewer U.S. jobs when the rest of the world has to catch up with where we are at right now.
Let's go to some of your questions out there here. If I can read my phone here. What do you tell pro-life evangelicals who feel they cannot vote for you, but otherwise would? Either one of you.
Well, go ahead, President. I just think when it comes to abortion, how can there be a more difficult choice that exists for anyone dealing with that? And when I talk about anyone dealing with that, well, it's the woman involved. And I don't believe anyone other than the woman involved should be making that choice.
Over the last couple of days, there have been a couple of unfavorable polls for the first time, really, I think, in all summer, as people are freaking out at a neck-and-neck, main event race. What would you tell? What is your message to people who are right now with you, but they're starting to panic about how close the Clinton versus Trump race is? How would you address their concerns?
Well, that you are voting for something, that you are voting for a principle. That's how you change things. And we are offering the alternative vote here. People are voting for us, not against someone else. And that's what everybody needs to recognize. And if everybody will vote their conscience, if everybody will vote for what they believe in, we're the next president and vice president.
Let's go to some more questions here. Sorry, microphone over here. What is your first step in ending the war on drugs?
First step would be to deschedule marijuana as a Class 1 narcotic, which would remedy the banking issues. It would also allow for research on cannabis that would substantiate what is arguably the most fabulous plant on the planet. If it were discovered tomorrow in the Amazon, it would be humankind's greatest discovery. Well, that's how you start. And you do leave marijuana to the states to determine whether or not states want to legalize it, similar to alcohol. But when we do that, and we're going to do it, and I think California is going to vote to legalize marijuana this November, when we do that, I think this country takes a quantum leap when it comes to understanding that drugs are first and foremost a health issue, not a criminal justice issue.
Governor Weld, when you hear Donald Trump talk about stop and frisk as a presidential policy, or when you hear, or if you read, God help you, Hillary Clinton's It Takes a Village book, which is a horror show, don't read it. Tell us a little bit about what that makes your Federalist heart feel like.
Well, I must say, I think a lot of what Mr. Trump says doesn't hold up in the clear light of day. My recent favorite was his claiming that Hillary Clinton started the birther rumors about President Obama in her 2008 campaign. He just completely made that up, and he doesn't care whether anybody, calls him on that or not. In terms of substantive policy, I think the most troubling thing about Donald Trump is his call for a closed economy and no more free trade. Of course, if you go back to Alexander Hamilton's report on manufacturers, he was on the same side of that issue. But since 1945, that would be turning our back on history and trying to go back to the buggy whip. He's going to unilaterally impose tariffs like the Smoot-Hawley tariff that brought us the Great Depression. I don't think Mr. Trump has been a student of history, nor has he shown any inclination in becoming one.
Well, and let me pile on a little bit when it comes to Donald Trump. You talked about stop and frisk. How about the notion of the deportation of 11 million undocumented workers? How's that going to work in New Mexico, where every other family is Hispanic? That's going to be a knock on the door, I guess, by Homeland Security asking for papers. So it's going to be stop and frisk in New Mexico if Donald Trump is elected.
Steroids.
On steroids. There we go.
Not that steroids are a bad thing. Steroids are fine. Just take it with a prescription from your doctor, if we have prescriptions. What would you do about the NSA mass surveillance in the U.S. and abroad?
My understanding is that that surveillance, NSA, was started under an executive order from Truman. 12333. I'm waiting for a fact checker to tell me whether that's right or not, but If that's the case, it seems to me that an executive order would allow for those satellites to turn themselves away from you and I as U.S. citizens. We do have due process, so a judge can be asked for the ability to monitor a suspected terrorist, a suspected individual plotting against the United States, but this mass surveillance, this metadata collection, come on, this is what we fought wars against, isn't it?
Governor Weld, you were the prosecutor. You're on the other side of that issue, at least in terms of being literally on the other side of the question of using government tools and everything like that. How does your experience kind of clash or complement the libertarian, distrust of government prosecutorial power?
Well, I think it complements it because, for example, the fight against ISIS and the lone wolf attacks in this country, my experience in the 1980s fighting organized crime, when we took out the top 3 echelons of La Cosa Nostra, which was the then dominant organized crime families, we did that by centralizing the collection of data, not on random citizens, but information relating to the organized crime families. Ultimately, we did get enough information to, as Gary says, go to a judge and say, here are very specific people. They're doing this, that, and the other organized crime. They're doing loan sharking. They're doing murders. They're doing narcotics, etc. And we got the evidence we needed to convict them and take them out. You could do that in this country with a task force of 1,000 FBI agents and prosecutors, as I have suggested, to combat the ISIS lone wolf. May not be everybody's entire dish of tea, but it's a pretty good idea, and it's based on something that actually happened not so long ago.
Based on what I know, I would pardon Edward Snowden. And based on what I know is that the information that he made available to news agencies did not result in anyone being in harm's way or actually coming to harm as a result of that information.
So everyone knows that you want to get rid of the war on drugs, or at least repeal federal prohibition on marijuana, and then see what happens afterwards in a more federalist kind of a approach to things. What are some other specific criminal justice reform related angles? There's more to life than just legalizing marijuana when it comes to the criminal justice system. What do we need to do, either one of you?
Well, allowing discretion, doing away with mandatory sentencing, doing away with 3 strikes, you're out. We've got a lot of people serving really long sentences in areas that, hey, if it's victimless, nonviolent, look, allow for judges to have that discretion.
I agree with that, and I've come around to that as a former prosecutor, but I do think we have to regard possessory offenses, narcotics. There's a lot of people in jail under the 3 strikes rule for 3 possessory narcotics offenses. They're in there for 10 years. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And I think we've got to treat even the problem of addiction as a public health emergency in this country and not as automatically a candidate for criminal justice treatment. In Massachusetts, we've already started referring women who suffer from narcotics or alcohol addiction to civil confinement, housing, not to the Framingham Criminal Center. So that's already started.
I saw maybe it was a tweet today by Jay-Z, and I think he's pretty spot on. The main category of prisoner in federal prison today is someone who's sold small amounts of drugs on numerous occasions and been caught. Mandatory sentencing. 3 strikes, you're out. Well, what I saw today was there are a whole bunch of white guys right now poised to get rich on marijuana when the black guys are in jail for having done the same thing.
Jay-Z, is he going to be a member of your cabinet?
Well, I don't want to put him in any sort of bother here, but if he checks it out and he wants to come out in support of the Johnson Weld campaign, we'd certainly welcome that.
We have another question here from all y'all on Facebook. And again, I'm Matt Welch from Reason. I'm with the Libertarian Party ticket governors, Gary Johnson and William Weld. Would you explain your support of and reservations about Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP?
Just that very simply, it may have its warts, but very simply it would result in more U.S. jobs. It would advance free trade. It would eliminate what I've heard is as many as 1,000 tariffs. And that it would allow for arbitration in cases that currently don't have any means of arbitration. Does it have its faults? I'm sure that it does, but a pledge that both of us have made is that we're going to sign on to anything that makes things better. And my understanding is TPP will advance free trade. We believe that's more U.S. jobs.
There's another very important aspect to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and that's that it takes a giant geopolitical step forward for the United States, in that it gives us treaty status with 11 Pacific-facing nations. They're not all in the Pacific. Canada and Chile are members, but most of them are. And one of those countries is not China. So it gives us a beachhead, a strategic geopolitical beachhead in all kinds of parts of Asia without the necessity for starting from ground zero. That's an entirely separate but fundamental reason to support TPP.
Russia has been a very weird presence in this election here. What is your assessment of Vladimir Putin, his meddling in other countries' affairs, and what is the U.S. role in dealing with it?
Well, look, we don't have to go to bed with Russia and Putin, and there are many reasons not to go to bed with Russia and Putin. But one area in which we should be joining hands with Russia diplomatically is Syria, in bringing an end to that conflict. Of course, there was optimism over this ceasefire that was signed, but given convoluted nature of Syria, where Russia and us are supposed to come together, and of course we accidentally kill 60 Syrian troops, and then overnight we have a relief convoy attacked. It's just how darn convoluted all of it is. Do we want to go to war over the Baltic states? I don't think we want to go to war over the Baltic states. But another thing that we want to also emphasize is that we are going to honor all treaties and obligations taking over as president and vice president. From that point going forward, I would love to see NATO, and this would be an agreement with Trump, actually see all the NATO members contribute 2% of their GDP, which they have all agreed to do, but apparently only 2 of them have actually done.
You worry about Putin? You worry about Russia's influence in Western and Central Europe?
Yes, I do. I mean, Russia is a great country, has been for a long time. The Russian people are a great people, but I do think it's fair to say that Mr. Putin is the most intermeddling-minded chief of state in the world today. Now, Russia is probably our second most important bilateral relationship after China, so it needs a lot of attention. But where Mr. Putin is concerned, and the hacking into U.S. records is very problematic, I think it's got to be, as President Reagan said, trust but verify.
Shout out to the millennials here. I'm guessing this emanates from them. Any thoughts on how to handle the student debt crisis?
I just think that students have been sold a bill of goods, and that the reason for the high cost of college tuition has everything to do with guaranteed government student loans. It's crony capitalism. It's the government interference in supply and demand, and there's an imbalance of supply because of guaranteed government student loans. I do think that it's a big issue that should be addressed. Students have been sold or are graduating from college today with a home mortgage without the home. I've actually heard a price tag of $60 billion to refinance those loans to maybe reflect the loans that were given to Wall Street, to bail out Wall Street. I think that would be worthy of looking at, believing that that is at some point going to have a really negative impact on the entire economy, given that currently it's the second biggest category of debt, and not by much.
So it's debate night. You're not in it. You're going to be watching it. You're going to be live tweeting it, from what I understand, over at the Twitter headquarters not far from here. What are you looking for? Or let's say, what would you tell the audience out here, the good people at Facebook, what should they be on the lookout for as they watch these two representatives of the dwindling but still powerful old 19th century parties that rule the roost over America?
Look for any optimism whatsoever. And Bill and I, hey, this country has never been better. We've never gotten along better with one another. We've never communicated better with each other. Our kids are smarter than ever. We have issues. Black Lives Matter. There is discrimination that exists in this country. But you know what? I bet we come to grips with this better, more unified than issues in the past have taken to come to grips with. But I don't think you're going to hear that optimism tonight. I think what you're going to hear tonight are two people that really want to kill each other, representative of two parties that really want to kill one another. And does anybody think that at the end of this evening that the country is going to collectively go, oh my gosh, things look terrific. Leadership looks terrific with either one of these two? No. Nobody's going to say that as a result of what happens tonight.
So what I'm hearing is that you think your poll number is going to go up immediately as soon as the thing's over.
Well, I would, in answer to your question, I would look from Trump, I would look for detail and not just palaver, not just bluffing and bullying, but being concrete and specific on what he wants to do and backing it up under cross-examination from Mrs. Clinton, which will come. She knows her brief. She's got 1,500 pages of documents behind her in her head. And you don't want Trump to get away with just insulting her and no substance. In her case, you want to look for evidence of being comfortable in her own skin, naturalness. I know her quite well, and I know her to possess those qualities. I'd say, in all fairness, they don't seem to have projected in the campaign, at least in recent weeks. So I would look for that naturalness tonight and hope for it even.
I have to ask this because it came up on my phone, and it's a dumb question. What kind of jeans does Gary prefer? They want to know.
Well, these Carhartts, man, they fit really well. That's my jean of choice at the moment.
Okay, I've heard you talk in talking about the debates and being excluded from them, that the 15% number is okay as far as you're concerned. It's more of the way that the polling questions are asked. Do you think that really the 15% number is a proper number for the Commission on Presidential Debates to use, or is that threshold a little bit too high?
Well, it's way too high. Shocking to me is that Ross Perot, when he was allowed to be in the debates, was polling lower than we are right now, which is shocking to me. And the recognition that after he appeared in the debate, he actually, for a short amount of time, was leading in the polls before he dropped out, and everything that transpired that I was absolutely unable to follow how and why that all occurred.
Governor Weld, you've been a Libertarian now for 4 months, since May or so. What has been the biggest lesson that you have learned by being in the third party camp for the first time during the crucible of a very contested and very ugly and interesting presidential campaign?
Well, I've always been comfortable in my own skin politically. I always said what I thought, and now I'm comfortable with my political party because I spent 20 years not buying the Republican Party's mean-spiritedness on social issues, and now, as I said at the Libertarian Party convention, I feel free at last.
Let's see if we have some more. Matt Hawk asks, good name, Matt Hawk, where would you focus budget cuts to get our debt under control?
Well, by focusing budget cuts to get our budget under control, we are pledging to submit a balanced budget to Congress over the first 100 days. Well, you can't do it if you're not going to address Medicaid, Medicare, and military spending. Social Security also has to be addressed. There have to be reforms in all these areas. It is not an option to say that we should do nothing. And Trump and Clinton is saying we should expand those programs. Well, that's a fiscal cliff. That's bankruptcy. And bankruptcy, how does that manifest itself in a country that prints money? Well, there's so much money chasing the same goods and services that it manifests itself in just whiplash inflation.
Another question here. David Williamson asks, how would you use the Department of Justice and the federal government to slow and stop police brutality, innate bias, and institutional racism?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I would do is have a heck of a lot more training of police forces. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And I'll give you an example that shows that you can get results here. When I came into office as governor, we had an epidemic of domestic violence, battered women. And they would come into court on Sunday morning, absolutely black and blue. Their boyfriends and husbands had beaten the tar out of them. And the judge would lean down into the well of the courtroom and say, "Miss, What did you do to irritate your boyfriend or your husband last night? Well, when we heard that, we held the judges upside down by their ankles and had, yes, police give them a whole lot of training about, what's what in domestic violence and how you just don't say things like that, let alone rule on that basis. Must have been delicious for the police to be lecturing a bunch of judges. But it worked. At the end of my first term, we totally revised that whole situation. I commuted the sentences of some women who've been convicted of manslaughter for defending themselves against, with a curling iron or whatever came to hand against people who were trying to beat them almost to death. And that sent a message to the judges too. They got the message. Now we have no more of that. What did you do to irritate your boyfriend in Massachusetts? Totally on training of the judges. We could do it totally on training of the police. As Gary often says, look at the departments with best practices and have everybody else model those practices and procedures.
Governor Johnson, I've seen you quoted in a Ben Birnbaum article that you were against Citizens United because it makes corporations into people. I've seen also that you're in favor of Citizens United because it legalized political speech. Can you kind of clarify your position a little bit vis-a-vis campaign contributions and Citizens United?
I don't like the notion of corporations being considered citizens. Campaign finance reform, I think there should be allowed unlimited campaign contribution, but that it be 100% transparent. Something that does not exist today with super PACs. Something that does not exist today. You don't know who's contributing what to whom. And when you limit campaign contribution, you advantage incumbents. You have less of a chance of changing the system if you limit campaign contribution.
Though if you have full disclosure, then it hurts anonymous political speech, right?
Well, theoretically, but I'd opt for 100% transparency, and that you could have a single individual, a multi-billionaire that could change the course of the country because that single individual could get behind someone running for office that really might win with that kind of financial backing and stand up with that person to say, this is what I believe in.
Is that a cry for help for a single individual to come out with billions of dollars for the Libertarian ticket?
Yes, you guilty. A lot of you out there, come on, step forward.
We're on Facebook Live. I'm Matt Welch with the Libertarian Party ticket, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. Good question. What is good about the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and what is bad? What would you fix?
What's good is that Affordable Care Act got 20 million more people into the system, and that's a step in the direction of controlling costs. That's a good thing that it did. What's bad is that there's too much government and too many insurance companies making decisions. Doctors and patients are not making decisions, and we need more competition there. So again, as Gary often says, you might want to not have cradle to grave every conceivable health issue be covered by mandatory insurance. You might want to limit it to just catastrophic coverage, and then after that, let willing buyers and willing sellers contract for stitches are us, gallbladders are us. I like health savings accounts. I like shopping for insurance across state lines. All these things are forbidden now. I like buying pharmaceuticals in Canada. So empower the consumer, which is the healthcare consumer, the person who cares the most about the quality of care. The two big objectives in healthcare are quality of care and controlling costs. And quality of care seems to have taken a back seat under Obamacare. So we think by introducing more competition, you scratch that itch.
Hit it on the head. Competition. Bring competition to healthcare, and competition. Hey, lower costs, higher degree of healthcare. When Bill says, "Hey, allow us to buy pharmaceuticals from Canada," guess what? If we were to allow that, price of pharmaceuticals would drop dramatically in this country, so we wouldn't be engaging in that process for not even a day before the pharmaceutical companies in this country change their pricing.
So do you think that we're living through a realignment moment right now? I mean, you guys are both Republican governors of blue states, pro-choice, liberal on social issues. That breed doesn't exist anymore. Why doesn't that exist, and is that an opportunity for the Libertarian Party specifically, or is it just, are we engaged in some kind of political crack-up? What's happening out there?
I believe that 60% of Americans appreciate the good stewardship of tax dollars, appreciate lower taxes, appreciate the fact that they can spend money better than the government. I think that 60% of Americans appreciate being able to make choices in their own lives, period, regardless. As long as those choices don't harm others. I think 60% of Americans, that's two legs of a four-legged stool. I think the third leg of that stool is I think 60% of Americans are skeptical about our use of military force to enact regime change that has resulted in this world being less safe, not more safe. And the fourth leg of that stool is equal opportunity, free markets, devoid of government interference, crony capitalism, put an end to it. That's free markets.
So I think the Republican Party is headed for a schism of some sort, either this cycle or the next cycle. And Mr. Trump's wing of the party is going to go the way of the Know-Nothing Party of the 1850s, which was part of the Whig Party that split in half. And they weren't around after 3 years. Now, the good news is the other half of the Whig Party went on to elect Abraham Lincoln. Honest Abe Lincoln reminds me of Honest Gary Johnson here.
Brainy Bill.
President
Brainy
of the
Bill,
United
no.
States.
Brilliant Bill.
Do I get
Brilliant Bill.
a nickname?
Marvelous Matt.
Marvelous.
Marvelous Matt.
Marvelous. Do you have an M on your? Yeah,
it's implied.
Nice.
That might be as close to a closing statement as I am now officially flustered here. Last one, let's say, from Emmett Berchtold, another great name out there. Considering that we have two candidates out here who are trying to compete with one another on giving as much or spending as much money as possible on infrastructure, what would you do about our allegedly crumbling infrastructure?
Well, now is a good time to be borrowing money when it comes to infrastructure. I mean, we've never had lower interest rates. So, yeah, I think that that's a great idea. And having served as governor of New Mexico, I can tell you that all the taxes that we collect when it comes to infrastructure need to go to infrastructure, not diverted to general fund, and that arguably there's a lot more money that should be available for infrastructure that you and I are paying for in taxes, in user fees.
I'm going to ask you to move to something like a summational closing statement here, as we're up against our deadline here. We have 2 hours between now and the first presidential debate, at which you were excluded by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is run by the Republican and Democratic parties. What is something you want to tell Americans before they all sit around and drink very, very heavily while they watch the presidential debate there? I'll start with you, Governor Welch.
Well, I would ask people to gauge the attitude of the candidates. You know, are they continuing to try to pit group against group, to try to set everybody's teeth on edge, to try to convince Americans that it's a bad time to be an American? You know, that's not our style. We're happy warriors. We understand the system. We'll live within the system, but we want to improve it, and we really want to win this election and serve our country. And we would have no thought in mind other than to maximize the happiness and the prosperity and the freedom and liberty of everybody in the United States. So, you know, to the extent that the other candidates are promoting divisiveness for their own purpose, they're doing the opposite of what Ronald Reagan did, which was to try to make everybody, and he succeeded in this, feel good about being an American.
Governor Johnson?
Certainty that Hillary Clinton will not lower taxes. Certainty that Hillary Clinton will enact more rules and regulations in all of our lives because government knows best. Certainty, Hillary Clinton is going to continue to drop bombs when it comes to foreign affairs. Uncertainty, or let me say, certainty when it comes to Donald Trump that there will be absolute uncertainty in everything he does. All over the board, and if what he says he's going to do, he actually ends up doing, I will tell you that starting with the deportation of 11 million undocumented workers, building a fence across the border, being in support of 35% tariffs, raising the cost of government by not doing anything regarding Medicaid and Medicare, and raising the budget for the military when we should be looking at a more efficient military. There's certainty in both of those categories. The certainty is not going to go up. Rules and regulations are only going to get better. Certainty when it comes to your right as an individual to make choices in your lives, we're going to always come down on the side of choice. Always. Certainty that we are not going to involve our military in regime change. We will judiciously use men and service women to attack if we are attacked, and I think that's why those good men and women have stepped up. And certainty that we're not going to kill thousands of innocent civilians in other countries. Certainty that we will stand up against crony capitalism. That means certainty that we will support free trade, which ultimately will result in more U.S. jobs.
Well, we are certainly out of time. Thank you, everyone in Facebook land, for watching and everywhere else. Shout out to Reason. Thank you, Libertarian Gov. Thank for inviting me to moderate. That's very nice of you. And stay tuned for more twittering and tweeting coming from these gentlemen in the 9 o'clock hour, and also over at Reason. For everybody here on this beautiful balcony and
Beautiful balcony.
nice
Oh my gosh.
Chelsea sunset, I'm Matt Welch. Goodbye.